late afternoon when the barricades went up at either end of the block. Now, nobody knew for sure from year to year who made the phone call or what kind of pull they had with the city, but late afternoon. The end of the block on each end was blocked off with city barricades that said, "Do not enter." Shortly thereafter, tables and lawn chairs began to appear at the end of driveways and moved out into the middle of the street. And then the food appeared. And then the people appeared. Happened twice a year. It was the semi-annual block party, and it was fun. It was an amazing thing, this block party, you see, because nobody was in charge. It just kind of happened. Nobody said, "I'll make sure that we have dessert," or "I'll make sure we have sandwiches," or "I'll make sure there are cold beverages." They just kind of appeared as if by magic. 1 block long. 17 houses full of people of varying ages and backgrounds. Some of them had lived on that block for over 30 years. And there were always 1 or 2 that had only been around for about 6 months. Some of them were really close friends, and some of them knew everybody's name, but that was about it. And of course, there were a few that, well, I recognize you from the party last year, but other than that, I haven't seen you very, very much. It was a great time, the semi-annual block party. It was important for a number of reasons. It was important because it gave folks an opportunity to sit and share food that they might not otherwise have had the opportunity to eat. Somebody on the block that made the greatest beer ox in the world, and if you've ever had a really good beer ox, you know what I'm talking about. Something that most people on the block wouldn't even attempt to make. You only got it twice a year at the semi-annual block party. But it was a way that they blessed each other. Part of the importance of the party was that as they sat around the tables and they sat around in the lawn chairs, they visited. They just shared about what was going on. Now, some of that visiting was family stories from the past. You know how good it feels to go back 30, 40 years and tell a story, and the person that's listening says, "I know exactly what you mean," and then they tell a story, and then somebody else tells a story, and all of a sudden you find out that there are things that we had in common that we didn't know about. Part of the stories, part of the visiting was just updates on what was going on in the very real present. This is what I did last week, or this is what I have to do tomorrow, or this is what my kids are doing right now in this time and in this place. And of course, before the word was ever invented, sharing around the tables at the block party was a chance to tell somebody else what your bucket list was. What I hope to do later on this fall or next year, or plans for retirement, or whatever it may have been. In a 4 or 5 hour block party twice a year, we learn more about our friends and neighbors, their hopes and dreams, their sorrows and joys, than we probably learn the whole rest of the year. And the amazing thing was that even as the block party affirmed the community that we shared, it renewed it. It became a vibrant, living thing once again, at least for a while. I've always been amazed at those block parties because most of the people that showed up from those houses were different. You know what I mean by different? You may have some different people in your family or on your block. Some of them were different because they had a wide variety of occupations. We had laborers, we had professional folk, and as the years progressed, we had a larger number of people on the block that were retired and could sit and laugh at everybody else talking about work. We had some that, well, in my family, 6 kids, and then there were a couple of couples on the block who, in their words, knew the pain of never being able to have children and what that meant in terms of their future. There were, of course, folks who were married, some to their original spouses and some who had been divorced and remarried, and then there were 1 or 2 folks who had been widowed through the years. They were different in a variety of ways. They were different politically. Believe it or not, there were actually some Republicans and some Democrats both living on that block. And that sometimes generated more heat than light in the discussions at the block party, but that was okay, because we were all family. In that particular block, there was not only differences in politics, but differences in religion. There were Protestants, there were Catholics. I don't know of any Muslims or Sikhs, but I'd almost be willing to bet there were 1 or 2 folks who professed no faith at all. And yet somehow on those summer evenings, twice a year, in the midst of all of those differences, community was formed. There were differences in terms of what we were facing, and each day some folks got together every year and said, boy, it's been a great year. I haven't been sick one single day. And other folks, day in and day out, faced ongoing illnesses, some of which were chronic and some of which were terminal. Part of coming together as community was understanding that, you see, we were all in different places at different times, and that was okay. And of course, we all brought our own different interests. There were a number of people on the block that were gardeners, and 1 or 2 that you talk about people who are different, 1 or 2 that really liked to shovel snow, and nobody quite understood that, but to each their own. You see, the amazing thing about the block party was that it affirmed community and it renewed community, not because we were the same, but because we were all different. And somehow, for those few brief hours, twice a year, we put all those differences aside and shared and talked and ate some more and ate some more, and in the midst of it all, became a community of people who truly, at least for a while, listened to each other and cared for each other. In the Acts of the Apostles this morning, we have the account of the earliest church in the 2nd chapter of Acts. And reading it through my eyes, which I understand are always a little strange, it seems to me that the first church was a block party, an ongoing, never-ending opportunity for people who were radically different to come together. As the Acts of the Apostles tells us, they broke food, they shared around the tables, they talked about their joys and their concerns, they shared with each other what they had so that those were in need, those needs were taken care of. That somehow in the sharing of what Acts calls the common life, what we did at a block party, they became a community, and it's a community that's lasted for over 2,000 years now. We've been talking about living out our membership vows, and the one we've been focusing on for the last couple of weeks is service. When we promise to support the church and through the church of the kingdom of God with our service, let me suggest that maybe one of the best forms of service that we can offer to each other is to commit ourselves to living in the church as if it was an ongoing block party. That we come together knowing that we're all different in this sanctuary. Every one of those categories that was present that I mentioned is here in this place right now. And yet, in spite of the differences, we are called to break bread, to truly listen to each other, to share the common life, to take care of each other. And in a very real way, as we talk about past, present, and future, to to not only affirm the community that we have, but to allow God working through that to transform this community and God's creation. You know, that's tough to do because you're busy, I'm busy, the world is a busy, busy place. Sometimes it's difficult to say we're going to block off the community for a few moments. We're going to erect the barricades and we're going to pull out the tables and the chairs and we're just going to sit down and be who we are. Loving each other, listening to each other, feeding each other, caring for each other. I think that's an important way that we serve each other. I think when we talk about our vows to serve the church and through the church, the community of God, maybe one of the ways to picture that is that we ought to be those folks in the church who are about partying. So, at the risk of saying something that some of my high school teachers would have been offended by, let the party begin. Because when we do that, the church, the community, the kingdom of God is renewed.